Good morning. Good to see everyone this morning. This class will be studying an issue of the spiritual sword. It was the January issue of the spiritual sword. The title of it is, the overall title, The Church Faces the Future. And so there'll be various classes that we're going to go through. Now, this was something that Drew Dulaney, who's our deacon in charge of classes, adult classes, read this and he loved it and he wanted us to do this. So we're going to be doing it. I'll give you a quick look at, through me audio, giving to you auditorily. I don't have it up on screen. Today we're going to deal with cultural changes. Then we got the following topics, not necessarily in this order. Biblical illiteracy, moral collapse, postmodernism, spiritual indifference, corrupt religion, false teachers, declining numbers, liberal influence, family weakness, aging membership, and youthful apostasy. Those are the various topics that we will cover over the quarter, and we'll do our best to help you understand why do we talk about this. For example, though we're not dealing with it today, postmodernism. You might think, well, I don't know anything about that. No, you and I probably would not have known anything about it, but we see the evidence of it. Postmodern thinking is a thinking without any rules. It's just basically you do what you want to do and I'll do what I want to do. That's basically what it boils down to. It's more complicated than that, and we'll see that as we get to the lesson, but that's the boiled down version of it. So today we're going to deal with cultural changes, and as we begin this, I want us to think about this. We live in an environment that is constantly changing. I mean, look, you all know, you've heard me, most of you have heard me preach for a good while, that my favorite time of any year is the year when we have the Olympics and I get to watch the Olympics. This year, I've not watched not the first one. What changed? The opening ceremony. It was a total affront to Christian people everywhere. And I think it was meant to be that way. I could be wrong, but even if it was not meant to be, somebody didn't use their thinking cap when they put it together. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of hearing about a male boxer that's boxing the women's division. And that kind of stuff. It's just, that's just, I don't, there's one thing I can tell you. There's a lot of things I might not be able to tell you. Do you have this illness or that illness? I don't know. But I can tell you, and I'm not going to ask for an examination, but I can tell you whether you're a man or a woman. I can figure that out. It's not very difficult. And yet, now you get to vote. You personally get to vote on what you are. That's culture. Culture doing that. See, to us. We need to realize that the environment that we live in, the society that we are around, impacts us. It affects us in the church. So look, for example, to the book of 1 John. Excuse me. 1 John chapter 2, verse 15. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it. But he who does the will of God abides forever. Now, I would ask you to just think about the culture in which we live. Do you see any evidence of the lust of the flesh? Where you're satisfying yourself? I think all of us would say yes. We do. We'd have different illustrations, depending on who you are and what you associate with, but you'd know about those things. What about the lust of the eyes? Well, I think that's part of what the opening ceremony of the Olympics was about, the lust of the eyes. To have an individual that was barely clothed at all, what's the point? Well, it's to attract your eyes, get your eyes involved in something that they don't need to be. And then the pride of life. And so one of the reasons we have difficulties with some individuals with whom we come in contact is that their number one concern is them. They're number one. And they want to be on top, and they don't care what it does to you to get there. That's pride of life. That's what we're dealing with. All right, look at chapter 5, also 1 John. Look at verse 19, and hear what John says as he's nearing the close of his letter. We know that we are of God, and the whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. Well, unfortunately, I think we could say, I see that. I can see that. The wicked one has a great deal of sway in the era in which we live. So our environment, whether we like it or not, impacts the church. And I think we've got to ask ourselves as members of the Lord's body, before we do something, why do I want to do this? What's leading me in this direction? If it's cultural, then is it okay? I mean, some things cultural are nebulous. That is, they don't have an impact one way or the other. So that'd be okay. But if it's leading me in the wrong direction, I need to avoid it. What about this? Advancement in technology is impacting us. I'm going to tell you an interesting story, or I think it is. Some years ago, when I was at the school, because I've been here 12 years, so you got to go back 15 years or more. He had an annual camp. It was a leadership camp. The young ladies studied under women teachers, and young men studied under some of us men. And we taught them how to preach. And on Friday, we had a preach-off. And the three best young men were going to actually deliver their messages Sunday morning consecutively. So this young man got up there, very, very nice young man. I've come to know him and love him a good bit. He got up and he's delivering his lesson, and he's talking about the Bible. And he says, now if you'll just scroll on down. I just about fell under the seat laughing. What do you mean scroll on down? What about, could I just turn the page? Would that be okay? I say, what's changed? Well, technology. There are people, and there's nothing wrong with this. I'm not attacking it. But there are people who get up in the pulpit and they've got the scripture reading, and they carry their iPhone or their tablet or whatever, and they've got it set on the proper passage, and they're going to read it. That's different. Was it that way, Wayne, when you were growing up? I don't think so. We had Bibles. We had physical, hard copy Bibles. So technology has changed that. What else do we know? Well, just think about this, and let's just go back to 2015. And we're going to talk about children between the ages of 8 and 11. In 2015, what percentage of children do you think between the ages of 8 and 11 would have had some kind of a smartphone? Now, Corey may actually have a pretty good guess. And Chris was still in the school system at the time. He might have a pretty good guess. The answer is 10% at that point, between 8 and 11. Now, I'm not talking about teenagers, so it's going to get even more dramatic as you go up there. All right, what about in 2021? How many children between 8 and 11 own a smartphone in 2021? That's 3 years ago now. The answer is 31%. Well, that's a change. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm here to tell you right now, I know enough about smartphones. It has more computing power in your hand than the first 4 computers I owned. The first 4. And that's if you have a not that great a smartphone. Some of these smartphones have as much computing power almost as my computer does. Now, you say, well, what difference does that make? Well, it doesn't necessarily make any difference. But what can you look at on the internet? You can look at, Wayne said anything you want to, and that's pretty much correct. Some school systems now are saying you can't bring your phone into class. I'm not saying here, I don't know about here, but that's what's happening. Why? Because of the impact that it's having. So technology is affecting all of us. You know, when I was at the school, after I'd been there, 2, 3, 4 years, I told one of the elders, this was the elder that was kind of the money man for the church. He was a brilliant man with money. And he's a money man for the school, I should say. And I said, I need to get a new phone. And he knew I had a flip phone. He said, well, you need to get a smartphone. I said, why? He said, well, because we might need to send you a document. And you could open it up on your phone and you could see it. I said, well, okay, that's what you think. I guess I'll get a smartphone. Well, let me add one little caveat. In the remainder of the time I was there, and it was years, they never sent me a single document, not one. So the theory was totally false. You know, didn't work out that way. But did it change the way I did things? Yeah. You know, I'd plug in wherever I was going into my GPS, and the phone would tell me how to go. You know, and that made a difference to a fellow that was preaching all over the country, because sometimes I was in a city I'd never been in before in my life, and I was trying to go somewhere. I didn't know where it was. Now, in those days, if it told you the building, here you are, it's on the right, it's probably on the left. I don't know why that was true, but it was often true. But technology has changed things. It's changing things for our children. Guys, we need guys like Chris and others that are really queued up on this to help us know, how do if my child's going to have one of these, because we need to be able to locate them or they need to be able to communicate with, okay, fine, that may be your determination. That's your personal determination. I don't determine that for you. But can somebody like Chris help me make that phone to where my child can't go where I don't want them to go? And Chris knows how. I don't. I can't even know how to keep my phone from taking me somewhere I don't want to go. So, but he can. And we need that. We need to be thinking about that. Why? Because remember, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, the Apostle Paul says, and you fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. If we let their phone drive their life, let me warn you, it's going to be more difficult to bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. We need to focus ourselves in that regard. What else? What about contact with other cultures? You know what's happened just in my lifetime, we went from the only time you could get the news was you might watch the morning breakfast show and you get news, say 5:30, 6 o'clock, whatever time it came on. There'd be news at noon, usually, on local channels. And then there'd be the evening news, and that'd be both national and local, wouldn't it? That's the way it was when I started up. Now what's it like? CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. I can't even name all of them. I can already tell you that. They're 24 hours. What can you learn on those? Well, you learn about everything going on over the whole world. You're exposed to all kinds of different cultures and different ways of thinking. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying we are. We're seeing these things. We're exposed to them. And we see what goes on. Immigration policies have changed the composition of entire communities. Well, when we lived in Cookeville, Tennessee, and that's That's only about 20 years ago or so. I found out just up the road from us in a town called Monterey, there was a Hispanic community that was huge. You know, they mostly worked for Purdue Farms, worked for the chicken plant, cutting up chickens and putting them in bags or whatever so they could be shipped off to be sold at the stores. But there was a huge community where, let me assure you, most of them were not born in Monterey, Tennessee. They weren't born there. Now, I'm not fussing about it. I'm just saying things changed. We needed a Hispanic minister to be able to communicate with them. Why? Because most of them don't speak enough English to communicate with them. That was true there. I don't know about everywhere else. I'm just telling you the way it is. Things are changing. We're being exposed to new cultures. We're bombarded with all kinds of worldviews. Just briefly think about that. What's the worldview of Putin? You ever thought about that? I think he views the world as his to take. That's what I think. I could be wrong. What about, what is it, Xi or whatever in China? What about him? I think that's the same thing. I think he views the world as his to take. He's probably more patient than Putin is, but that's what I think he's trying to do. These are worldviews that we're not accustomed to. Now, those are geopolitical worldviews, but what about worldviews in reference to the soul of man and to the approach to life? When you think about it, again, go on that 24-hour news channel, you're liable to see a whole bunch of women in a certain area, and they're wearing burqas, and you can't tell anything about them. All you see is their eyes. That's it. I'm not making fun of it. I'm telling you, it's a totally different worldview than what you and I have, and we've got to know how to cope with that. The church has got to be prepared to deal with that. And by the way, there's some places in this nation, take Michigan, for example, that have a high population of people whose women might follow that pattern. I'm not saying they do, I'm saying they might. Because that's the culture and the climate they came out of. And that's what we're dealing with. So what do we need in the middle of all that, with all the different competing ideas that we have? What do we need to remember? Look at the book of John, John chapter 8. We're particularly going to look at verses 31 and 32 of John chapter 8. And this is Jesus talking. Of course, he's talking to the Jewish leaders. They're a constant thorn in his side. And they definitely had a different worldview. And their worldview was kind of geopolitical in a way. They wanted to keep power. And if they let Jesus get too much power, they're going to lose power. That's just a simple fact of it. So here he comes, verse 31, 32. Then Jesus said to those Jews who believed him, "If you abide in my word, you're my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." That would be true today, wouldn't it? If when you face a new culture, a new worldview, a new idea, what do you need to do? The first question that I ask about anything is it true? See, there's some things true that I never thought about before. I don't know about you, but I can speak for me. Things I never thought about that. Never crossed my mind. But just because I never thought about it before doesn't mean it's not real. Nor does it mean it's not true. So the first question is always, is it true? Because Jesus says the truth will make you free. If it's something even in the Bible that I've not seen before, well, if it's true, then I need to change my thinking. I say, if it's true. I know the Bible's true, but it may be that somebody is in their reasoning is not reasoning correctly from the Bible. That's what that point was about. So, contact with other cultures. What about marriage in our culture? When I was born, that basic era, the 1950s, divorce was still considered to be, well, frankly, you just don't want to talk about it. If you were divorced, you kind of hid it, because that wasn't an accepted thing, generally speaking. I'm not saying nobody ever got a divorce, but there were few divorces. Most households, when I was growing up, were comprised of a mom and a dad and the children. That's the way it was when I was growing up. And by the way, that would be true across the United States and across all culture lines. You can do the research. You're going to find that's across all culture lines. Something has changed. Notice this. There were in 2022. Well, let's start in 1960. 1960, single-person households represented only 13% of the entire nation. 13% single-person house. That means a single parent is the way that really is defined. This comes from the United States Census Bureau. This is not Gary making it up as he goes along. I'm very careful about that kind of stuff. Okay, in 2022, there's quite a change. 29% of all U.S. households are single parent. And how many does that mean? 37.9 million one-person households. Now, how's that going to impact the church? How are we going to deal with that? Well, I think we've got to contemplate the need, for example, to have classes for single people, single parents. They need things that two-parent households don't necessarily need. Dads don't think like moms. You ever notice that? Well, moms don't think like dads either. So if you're a dad, single dad, with your children at home, do you need some guidance on how to give them a certain aspect of love that they're going to miss because mom's not there? The answer to that's yes. What about the other way around? What if mama's by her side? Does she need the influence? So see, this is where the church can play in. Can men within the church become kind of like big brothers or whatever to the boys who are in single-parent households? Well, yeah, we could do that. Do we need to? Well, I think we probably do, because that's the culture in which we live. We need to think about it. What about sexual sins? What do you see there? In 2022, the number of live births in the United States to unmarried women was 1,461,305. That's a powerful number. That's just huge. What about something else? What about our children? Now we're back to children and adults, I should add, and the way they view things on the internet. More than 90%, listen to that, that's 90% of young men report watching porn videos with some regularity. You wonder why I want to watch out? How we use these cell phones? How the boys are using them? And hey, guess what? Let me tell you something new. The recent statistics coming out of the Census Bureau is that the number of young women viewing pornography is on a rapid increase. It's going up faster than young men. In fact, got to be careful. Okay. Many of these videos depict acts that they might never engage in themselves. In other words, they're erotic fantasies. On Pornhub, the world's largest porn website alone, well over 90 billion videos are viewed daily by more than 64 million visitors. 26% of them are female. Now that's worldwide. I understand that. The 90 billion, we couldn't match that in the United States or nor can we match the other number either, probably. But notice what's going on. This is what's happening in our culture. Now, let me tell you, how does this, you might say, how does this impact me? I'm going to tell you how it impacts us. Young men who have viewed over and over again erotic fantasy videos have a terrible time in marriage because it's not going to be like that. You say, well, what difference does that make? Well, I can't invite you in, but come sit in my office and I'll show you. I counsel these people. The man that's hooked on pornography, his wife will never satisfy him. Never. It's not going to happen. We got to get him off of pornography. And to do that, there are some we've had to take away everything they had that was computer related. Everything. They went back to a flip, and you can still get a flip phone, by the way. It's still possible. We had to go all the way back to that to get them off of it. It's our society. It's what we're facing. Now look, I'm not trying to be negative today, but we got to realize this is what's in front of the church. And we can hide our head in the sand. We can pretend that it's not out there. But if we do, beware, because those folks are going to come into this building and we're going to think they're just like us. They're not just like us. And that doesn't mean we can't help them and that we can't love them. But it does mean we've got to be alert to what do they need to learn. What do they need to study? How can we show them love and encourage them to grow and to change? I think about what Jesus said. Look at Matthew chapter 5. This, of course, Sermon on the Mount. And in Matthew chapter 5, you hear the Lord delivering quite an interesting message. And it even surprised, I think, the people that listened to him. Look at verse 27. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you, that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye caused you to sin, pluck it out, cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. That's why we take the computer away from a guy addicted to pornography. That's why we don't encourage him to be involved in that. Y'all have any questions? I really am not trying to be negative. This is the worst lesson in the bunch, in my opinion, because there's a lot of things here that could be viewed negatively. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to say, church, wake up. If you hadn't caught on to it yet, that's what's out there. That's what we're dealing with. And if we're going to love these people, we got to understand something about where they come from. I'm not saying you got to join them, but you got to understand them a little bit to be able to teach them. What about drug deaths in the United States? In the calendar year 2022, at least 109,413 were reported to have died from drug overdose and toxins in the unregulated drug supply, and that comes from Drug Policy Facts. Why do they say at least? Because those statistics continue to be collected after the year is over. They continue to look at things, and they expected the number actually to go up, not down on that thing. What are we going to do about that? It's real. One thing I want, brother, all of us to consider is the use of opioids. And I'm talking about for anybody. I don't care who you are. If you have knee replacement surgery, guess what they're going to want to give you? Some form of opioid. OxyContin or something like that. That's what they're going to give you. Okay. I understand. You need something to take the edge off. I get it. Not saying that's a bad thing. But let me tell you something. If you don't watch how you use it, you get hooked on it. Then when the prescription runs out, you either got a doctor shop, and some people do that, don't they? Yeah, they doctor shop, and they'll come into the pharmacy. I'm sorry, Amanda is a pharmacist, so I know she knows what's going on. So here comes this person today that got a prescription for OxyContin from Dr. A, and next week it's from Dr. B, and the next week it's from Dr. C. So that's how they do it. Some of them, they doctor shop it, but that's not the only way. If you can't find a doctor to give it to you, you go out on the street and you find somebody selling it. Guess what's in a lot of the street opioids? Fentanyl. What's killing people? Fentanyl. We got to wake up. We got to warn our children. And these are real things, but it's not just our children, it's us adults too. I could get hooked on opioids under the right circumstances. Anybody can. Got to be careful. Got to think about it. Listen to Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. This is the Apostle Paul actually talking about things against which there is no law. And that's most interesting. He's talking about the fruit of the Spirit. And here's what he has to say. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law. Well, self-control would take into account a lot of things, wouldn't it? You know, we talk about the use of drugs, the use of alcohol, other things, many other things. Self-control is a very, very important thing that we need to have. Look at Peter. He talks about this, and I believe it's 2 Peter. On my notes, I put the wrong Peter. But try 2 Peter chapter 1 and listen to what Peter has to say, beginning at verse 5. But also for this very reason, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, to virtue knowledge, to knowledge self-control, to self-control perseverance, to perseverance godliness, to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness love. How are we going to deal with drug deaths and alcohol deaths? Well, partly we're going to have to help people develop self-control. They need to understand the importance of it. What about worship? Care to take a guess? What percentage of Americans attend some worship service every week? Every week. 20%. People in the United States, all people. 20%. Nationwide. Now, if you live in a subdivision like I do, you kind of got that figured out. Because when I go out, people are mowing their lawn. They're not going to worship. Now, it's not everybody, but what, 80%? That's generally speaking, that's the number. Okay, what else do we know? How many attend, do you think, would you guess, how many attend at least once a month? Just one time a month. 41%. We're not even up to half yet, folks. Attend worship one time a month. I guess it's like the old Brill Cream commercial, a little dab will do you, I suppose. I don't know. That seems to be what they're thinking. But that's not correct. It's not true. And then finally, we come to this. 57% of Americans seldom or never attend a religious gathering. That's more than half. And you know these people. You've met them. You work with them. You meet them in the store. They're checking you out or whatever. Yeah, that's what's going on. Well, how should we view that? Look at Philippians chapter 2. And I want us to think about this in terms of you and me. What good is coming to worship gatherings? I mean, okay, we worship God. Let's just take that. That's a given. That's why one reason we come to worship. But what other benefits are here when we gather with one another? Listen to Paul, Philippians 2, beginning at verse 1. Therefore, if there's any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any affection and mercy, fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of the other. We got a most interesting phone call at the office the other day. You see, our young people, our children actually, on 2 Sundays ago, made out cards to the shut-ins. And we got a beautiful phone call from one lady. She said, she told how many cards she had in front of her. It was just and how happy it made her. I know already for sure that, for example, Jerry and Nita Hart love to get cards. And you say, well, how do you know? Well, I'll tell you part of how I know. Because you can't have a birthday or an anniversary, but you get a card from Miss Anita. You know, people tell you what they like, but what they do. They do. Am I right, Bobby? Don't you? She sends cards all the time. All the time. See? So when we come together, we get to see each other and we get to notice. And I don't know about you, but on occasion I'll say, how you doing today? And they'll say, oh, I'm all right. And I said, no, tell me what you're really thinking. Because you can hear it. It's in their voice. What's going on? And then they open up. That's a thing that you can only have face-to-face, one-on-one with somebody. That happens when we come together. We're family. You know, Teresa cannot call her mother if she's got a headache. I said she can't call her. Do you know why? Her mom's first question is, what's wrong? You don't think she can hear it? If you're close to people, you hear it, don't you? That's what we need to be in the church. We need to develop and encourage each other. So, in Hebrews chapter 10, 24 and 25, he said, let us consider one another to provoke unto love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as manner some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. That's what we do when we come together. We build each other up. We encourage each other. That's the beauty of it. And yet, look how many people in our country don't have that. What about idle men? You all know I'm an old debater, and I get some of these statistics they give on the radio. Because of debating so many years, I just kind of look at the radio with one eye half closed. You know, what did you just say? Did you really say that? You know, here's the real statistic. This comes of all things from Newsweek magazine. Let me promise you, they're not going to take my side most of the time in Newsweek magazine. But here's what it says. While in the early 50s saw around 96% of working age American men between the ages of 25 and 54 working full or part-time jobs, that proportion has now moved to just 86%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You say, well, what difference does it make? I'll tell you, it makes a lot of difference. In part, it makes a difference for the family. If you're not working, how do you have what you want? You know, do you consider crime to get what you need? You might. You know, if you're not working. And we're talking about, 14% of the men from age 25 to 54, they're not working at all. That's scary to me. Because I know what comes out of that. And you do too. You've seen it. We need to be careful. Truth is that Paul talks about that in the book of 2 Thessalonians, chapter 3. Listen to what he writes. He loves this church. If you've read these 2 letters, you know he does. But listen to him. Verses 10 and 11, 2 Thessalonians 3. For even when we were with you, we commanded you this. If anyone will not work, neither shall he eat. For we hear that there's some who walk among you in a disorderly manner, not working at all, but are busybodies. And by the way, that's the second thing that happens. When a person not working, their business is to get into your business. They don't have any business of their own, so they come deal with your business. It's the idea. Paul says they won't work, they shouldn't be able to eat. Okay, so how are we going to respond to this? How should the church respond? I believe, number one, we need to restore an emphasis in the church. Let's start right here on daily Bible reading. Daily Bible reading is important. Why? Listen to Paul as he speaks to the elders from Ephesus. It's in Acts chapter 20. He's called them to Miletus. He's closing out his discussion with them. And when he does, here's what he says in verse 32. So now, brethren, I commend you to God and to the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and give you an inheritance among all those who are sanctified. You want to be built up in life? You want to start every day on a higher note? Get into the book. Get into the Bible. It's got encouraging words in it. Oh yeah, every now and then I'll find out what I'm doing wrong. And I'll have to modify that, but it's got encouraging words. It even encourages me to, if I'm doing wrong, to make it right. So get into the book. Number two, encourage daily Bible reading. Not just restore that emphasis, but encourage it. And you think about the Bereans who search the scriptures daily. What about this? Include children and young people in spiritual education. Brethren, I'm telling you something. You ever notice this? If I've got a problem with my smartphone, I do not generally ask an adult. I go find a teenager. And I hand it to them and say, can you help me fix this? And they can do it in a heartbeat. Sometimes a 10-year-old can do better with an iPhone than I can. You know, it's true. It's true. And yet, what we act like they can't learn Scripture. That is, in a very technical word, that's baloney. That's what that is. They can learn Scripture. But we got to focus on it. We got to help them develop. Moses, we just studied Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 9, talks about, you got to talk about it all the time. You know, you want to know what people talk about, what children talk about? Owen takes Griffin to watch the train. Guess what Griffin likes? Trains. I see little kids around here that are enamored with particular football teams. I'm not going there. We're getting too close to season, but you know what I'm talking about. They absorb it. They pick up what you're talking about. They'll absorb Bible, but we got to give it to them. We got to lay it in front of them. Next, encourage social interaction with faithful Christians. We need to love each other enough that we want to be together. It needs to be a regular part of what we do. Seize the opportunity, brother. I don't know, I don't know if it's too late now, but I feel like knowing Derek, he'll figure a way to work you in. If you're not part of this, guess who's coming to dinner that's coming up this coming Friday? You need to get involved. Find a way, see if you can get in. Why? Because you need to be with Christians. Because it builds you up. I've learned things about people in private or in a different setting that I never knew before. Like, for example, don't play cornhole with Bobby. It's that simple. You don't want to do that. Not unless you're really good, because that's what he likes. But, we learn each other, don't we? When we're together, that's the point. And then be careful what the center of your life is. What is the focus of your life? You don't know how you're going to find out? Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That's what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6. So ask yourself, where's my emphasis? What will I not miss in life? When you tell me that, I can tell you where your heart is and where your treasure is. I hope this helps us The study helped me if it didn't help anybody else. So thank you.